So another outcome of the shelter at home is that we are all sitting an incredible amount. I know I'm sitting way more than I usually sit. So I thought that we would focus this practice around pigeon. And it's kind of interesting intellectually as we go through the practice, if you want to try to notice, when do you feel like you're in pigeon when you're not in the classic pigeon? Or when do you feel like, your leg, is kind of, oh, that's the front part of pigeon. Oh, that's the back leg in pigeon. I'm just flipped over. So I'm going to try to create the practice or take you through the practice in such a way that we're touching on and prepping for and working our way into pigeon, because pigeon is brilliant for very tight hip sockets and lower backs and IT bands, the band that goes down the outside of the pelvis and down the outer leg. So that's my rationale for this particular practice. Too much sitting. All right. So rest back. We'll do probably a shorter shavasana this time. Okay. All right. And so just attend to your breathing. Maybe we'll ask a series of brief questions about the breath. The first question would be, can I be present with or feel the entire length of my in-breath and the entire length of my out-breath? And as I feel or stay with the entire length of my in-breath and the entire length of my out-breath, maybe I notice that, one of those parts of my breath cycle is a little longer, maybe one's a little shorter. It's possible, that one individual breath might suddenly become very long or become very brief. And so the breath itself has a life. It undulates. There's a length of the in-breath. There's a length of the out-breath. There's the relationship between the two. The in-breath and the out-breath, we could say, are the major portion of our breath cycle. Right? They're the two large, familiar portions of our breath cycle. But there are two other parts to the breath cycle, and that is a short pause or rest at the end of the in-breath, and a short pause or rest at the end of the out-breath. This is just part of natural breathing. Right? So very simply, I have an in-breath, and in a way I finish it. There's a little tiny rest. And then there's an out-breath, and I finish it. And there's a tiny rest or pause. And then, of course, the in-breath arises again. Right? So can I notice, feel, in theory, not change, just watch the change in the four parts of my breath cycle? The in-breath, the rest, the out-breath, the rest. And then I'm just going to ask one more question. Can I continue feeling the 4 parts of my breath cycle and just notice the ground more deeply during the exhalation and also during the pause or rest that follows the exhalation? I breathe in, that's all I'm interested in, the feeling of the breathing in. The pause after the in-breath takes all of my awareness. As I exhale, I also feel my body resting, 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 and that resting or sinking continues during the pause after the out-breath. Okay, take a few more breaths in this way, totally attentive to the entire breath cycle, and then just let your mind drop back a little bit and just let the breath be, and just notice how the breath feels when you're not trying to do anything except for let it live in your body. When you begin to be ready to move, just keep a little bit of your awareness around the feeling of the pelvis in contact with the mat, or any feeling of movement in the pelvis itself, the pelvic girdle itself, when you start to move in whatever way is best for you. Okay. Yeah, if you tuck your legs into little boat, if you happen to be doing that, one thing to notice in addition to the pelvis resting on the mat is the sense of the fold at the front of the hip socket. And so quite folded, quite soft. Okay. The more the back of the pelvis and the back of the whole torso rests into the mat, potentially the softer the front of the hip sockets can be. It's as if that fold at the front is endless. Okay. All right, so as we have this intention to progress towards some version of typical pigeon, one preparatory pose is cow's head. Cow's head in little boat. So that's one knee crossed over the other. If this is not accessible for you today, you can cross one ankle over the other. And another very nice thing to do is to take a bolster and put it under the pelvis while you're doing this little series of little boat variations that we're about to engage in. The bolster underneath the pelvis certainly makes things easier in terms of the relationship between the leg and the back of the pelvis or the whole pelvis, and tips your legs towards you. Okay, so here's a few suggestions for cow's head. Rock from side to side. Your hands can be on your shins or on your ankles or behind your knees. Okay, and do a little bit of shifting from one leg in front and then the other. Right, so do each side of cow's head. All right, we're just starting to eke away at the tension on the outer hip and the outer pelvis. Okay, and it can be useful to change your hands once in a while if that's accessible to you. So behind my knees, rock or move or simply just rest and breathe. On my shins, you can reach farther. If you reach farther down and reach towards your ankles, you're going to be changing the amount of fold or flexion and release in the hip socket. Right? So you might notice that. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Then there's a nice little simple release you might do, which would be to lengthen your legs up towards the ceiling, roll the legs inwards and outwards, so internally rotate your legs, externally rotate your legs. Yeah. Right. And a very classic counter pose to cow's head, because it's a cross-legged position, is to widen the legs. So the legs can be wide, long, or you can do little boat with your knees bent, but the legs quite wide. Okay? All right. Yeah, and if you've got your legs wide, long, or bent, you can rock, you can circle. Great. All right. Okay. And then there's some nice little variations in cow's head where you lengthen one leg at a time. So go back to the simple cow's head, cross your knees, and the setup for the hands, I think that's easiest, is to reach around and hold behind the farther knee. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Right, and then all you're going to do is kind of experiment, right? So if I'm holding on behind the knee, the reason to hold behind the knee is so that you have the leisure to lengthen your leg. Yeah, so you might lengthen out the leg that's farther from you, right? So you might do something as simple as just bend the leg and lengthen it. You might leave yourself in that position where the one leg is long and the one is bent, and rock and move. You may have the urge to circle your foot or move your foot, point and flex it. All of those physical urges, follow them. Please follow them. Okay, so you lengthen the leg that's farther from you, and then eventually you bend it, and you explore what it feels like to lengthen the leg that's closer to you, right? And and lengthen is the operative word, right? So the leg may become what feels like straight, but it might still have a little bend in it, and that's okay. Yeah, and again, bend and lengthen, rock the whole structure, so you're rocking your legs in your pelvis or circling your legs in your pelvis. Yeah, any movement of the foot. And so you could go back and forth between the one leg long and the other leg long. And the third option is to try out, with the legs very crossed, lengthening both legs. Right? Right, and in all of these, I want to keep noticing my breathing. I want to keep noticing that there is some amount of contact between the back of my pelvis and the bolster that I'm on, or the ground. Yeah, and the counter pose here is something wide, right? So a little boat with knees wide or legs long and wide. And there's, of course, a third option, which is I've got one leg long, the other leg is bent, but my knees are still quite wide apart, right? And you can alternate between, you know, which is long and which is bent. Yeah, move around in any way that you like to get from one leg long to the other leg long. Beautiful. Okay. All right. All right. Then the sibling pose that kind of goes with cow's head here is keyhole, right? So that's the one where one of your legs is bent and it's in kind of typical little boat, and the other leg is crossed, and the ankle rests above the knee of the parallel leg. Okay? And you kind of reach one leg through the empty space between, one hand between the empty space between your legs, and hold on behind the parallel knee, and you reach around with the other arm. Right? So keyhole looks like a kind of more like a square in the legs, and you can rock back and forth. You can lengthen the leg you're holding, right? That's a very lovely thing to do in keyhole. You might feel the urge to move the foot. You'll notice when your leg is long, in particular, when your leg is long, if you flex the ankle and foot, you start to get a release up the entire back of the leg. Yeah, great. All right, so please try these keyhole variations on each side. There's the typical keyhole where you have both knees bent. It's fantastic for releasing the outer hip, the one outer hip. And then, of course, if you lengthen the one leg, you start to release the back of that leg as well. Right? And any rocking or circling allows the body to go towards where your particular tensions are, and then away, towards the tension and away. It's as if you're taking the soft tissue that's tight by the hand and showing it where the door is, showing it where it can just release. Yeah, the movement is very useful. Towards the difficulty, away from the difficulty. Breathing. So maybe just take a little bit of time on your own. I would revisit cow's head, which is the knee over knee cross, right? Both legs bent, or any of the one leg long or both legs long options. Sink your pelvis. Feel your breathing. Yeah. Another possibility in terms of wide legs is to put your legs on the ground and either have the legs long and wide. Yeah, if you're up on a bolster, you'll see if that's okay for you in terms of your low back. Right, so legs wide on the ground. And just rest. And then a kind of interesting counter to that is to bring the legs back underneath you and just rest one ankle on top of the other. So it's as if you're plopping the weight of one leg onto the other leg, right? You're helping the lower leg and the hip socket of the lower leg release more deeply. You're giving yourself an assist with the leg. Okay. Yeah, so that's it. Switch legs as you're ready, as you like. Feel all 4 parts of your breath cycle. And then another wide leg option with the legs on the ground. And again, this would be, for most of us, without the bolster. So if the bolster is still underneath your pelvis, I would take it away. To do the butterfly pose, or the one that's called Baddha Konasana, so you bend your knees, let the knees open wide, and let the soles of the feet rest together. Right? Now, sometimes this feels like this is too strong for the lower back or creates tension. So an option would be to leave one leg wide and bring the other leg back up to parallel. So you've got the sole of one foot on the ground, and you've got the other leg dropped wide, dropping towards the ground. And you just feel it falling and falling, the leg that's dropped wide. Right? And you would, of course, switch sides. So you're giving each hip, each leg the opportunity to release in this kind of open, wide, turned over position. Right, so one experiment would be perhaps to go back and forth, one side and then the other, and then check every once in a while how it feels to allow both legs to rest open and wide. Right? And you're always, always interested in the comfort of your lower back. Right? The pelvis rests deeply. What feels like the back of the waist rests deeply. Your breath perhaps enters the body all the way down into the low body, moving the belly. In this wide kneed position, we can even feel the breath in the pelvic floor. Now, one of the typical counter poses to this butterfly pose or Baddha Konasana is to come back to little boat, or come back to drawing the legs towards you and then letting them come up in the air. And what that will do for you is release the tension, if you've collected any, in your low spine, in your lumbar spine. Right? So my legs tucking towards me helps to lengthen out my lumbar spine, helps to release tension in that area. Okay. All right. So now we're going to do a little sequence called squatting on the ceiling, where you let your legs lengthen out a little bit more. It's as if you're trying to face the soles of your feet towards the ceiling, but your knees remain bent. And you want to reach up and hang your hands or your fingers off the sides of your feet. And if that's too far of a reach, you can bend the knees even more, or you can put the bolster back underneath your pelvis, or you can just hold on behind your knees. Okay? Yeah, so rock a little. This is called squatting on the ceiling because it's the shape of a squat, and your feet are facing the ceiling. Good. Right. Now, if we want this to be in the shape of a lunge, as if you're doing the shape of a lunge, but you're resting on your back, leave one leg in this position, this squatting on the ceiling position, and put let the other leg just drop back into little boat. So it bends a little bit. So it's little boat, the foot's not on the floor yet, right? So that's first possibility. The second possibility is that little boat leg, just as you just did, that's right. You can put the foot on the floor, but the knee is bent. Yeah, keep resting your hand, your arm off the leg you're holding, right? So that might be all you do. If you want more challenge to the legs, the hip sockets, lengthen out the leg that's on the ground. And you can assess whether that's a good choice for you. Right? So I'm interested in whatever position I choose for that leg I've been moving. I'm interested in being able to rest my back body into the ground to continue to feel my breathing. Right, and when you're ready for a change of sides, I would come back to little boat. I'll come back to little boat, so you do something quite soft, quite soothing for you. Yeah, take a few breaths. Right. And then we can go through the whole process again on the other side. So squat on the ceiling with both legs, right? So as if my feet are facing the ceiling, and perhaps rest your hands off the sides of the feet. All right. And then the second side leg, let it just come into little boat. Yeah, you're still holding onto that squatting leg. And then maybe the moving leg goes to sole of the foot on the floor, what feels like a bridge pose position. I'm resting, resting, resting my back body. I'm letting the fold in the hip socket soften. And then maybe the leg that you've been moving can lengthen out. You decide whether that makes sense on this side. The heel is heavy, the leg is heavy, the whole body is heavy. Great. And then again, when it's time to change the position, I would come back to little boat. You might want to do a gentle twist at this point. A little boat twist could be useful, so the legs close, close, close to me, and then I drop them both to the side. Right? So one attribute of little boat twist is that it helps to release what feels like the outside of the pelvis, the top side of the pelvis, and perhaps down the length of that top leg. Right? This is preparatory for your pigeon. Little boat twist can have bent knees, or both legs could be long, as if you're sending your feet towards the wall. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. All right. And then let's try one more posture on the back. This is the posture that's called Yogi Nidra. So it starts out like squatting on the ceiling, right? So I bring my legs up. I have the feeling that my feet are visually, it looks like the soles of my feet are pointing towards the ceiling. And then I let both of my legs turn outwards, externally rotate. Right? So my knees move away from one another. Not wide, well, it could be wide, but more turn them outwards. Mm-hmm. I can show you, right? That's in, yeah. So I would turn my legs outwards, so it's almost like there's it's like a diamond shape, a negative space diamond shape between the legs. And then I dive my hands between the legs around the foot level and take a hold of my heels. Yeah, and then I'm just gonna rock here a little bit and circle here a little bit, right? So those of you who know pigeon and do pigeon, it's as if both legs are like the front leg of pigeon here. Okay, that's it. Right? Now we could go through a similar procedure here that we did with the lunge pose. I can leave one leg in this position, let the other leg come to little boat. Right? Or maybe that leg comes down to bridge. Right? The leg that's still in the air, that hip softens and softens. My pelvis rests and rests. Perhaps the leg that's moving lengthens out. This is a huge, huge stretch because the legs are so far apart. Okay, good. All right, so take a few breaths here. Adjust the leg that you've been moving to the position that's best for you. So again, could be long, could be in what's like bridge pose. That's it. Or could be even in little boat. It's kind of nice sometimes to do the softest one. Yeah, it's very useful. Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. Right. And then I can go step by step through the second side. Right? So again, I bring my legs to what feels like squatting on the ceiling, and I turn my legs outwards. I dive my hands through so I can just, for a few breaths, hold on to my heels, rest my head, rest my upper back. The pelvis might feel like it's starting to lengthen and come away from the ground. That's just because the body's in such a strong flexion. That's fine. Right? And then you release one of those legs, the one that you're doing the second side now. So it's little boat for that leg or bridge pose for that leg. The leg that's elevated, it's turned out, the hip socket is soft. Maybe that leg lengthens. See how that feels. Yeah, a bigger breath sometimes comes up naturally, that's it, as we're doing something that's a little bit more challenging for the body. A deeper breath leads to a deeper release, or when the body needs a deeper release, often we take a deeper breath. All right, and then maybe work your way back, either to bridge and little boat, right? And then, just release your legs and move them freely when you're done with this second side. Okay, yeah. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to give you a minute or two on your own. You might do any one of those options again. You might just rest. Just what does my body need right now before we change orientation? Okay. And whatever you're doing, whatever it is, can you rest the parts of your body that are on the ground a little bit more fully into the ground? If you're in stillness, can you notice all 4 parts of your breath cycle? And if you're doing something that's asymmetrical, make sure you even yourself off. If you haven't yet attended to the in-breath pause, out-breath pause, let yourself touch on that awareness again. Okay. When you are ready, please come to Child's Pose. If you feel you need a little bit of cat before you do Child's Pose, please go right ahead. We're going to do a few variations in Child's Pose that guide us towards a pigeon variation. So if you're in simple Child's Pose, here's another place to really notice the folding of the front of the hip socket. Okay? If I just rest in Child's Pose, I can concentrate on the soft folding at the front of the hip socket and the heaviness of the pelvis. If I'm doing cat pose, I can notice the rolling in the hip socket. When we do cat pose, there's a rolling, literally, of the pelvis on top of that round head of the femur bone. It's quite fantastic. You can feel the anatomy working. Okay. So here's a few variations of a parallel leg version of pigeon. I start in child's pose, right? And I feel the typical, important, essential child's pose sensations. My pelvis is heavy, my head is heavy, and maybe add on that somewhat maybe new sensation of noticing the soft folding of the front of the hip. Now, let's call this symmetrical child's pose. If you lengthen one leg back, so you've got a long leg behind you, and the other leg remains in that folded child's pose position, you then have an extended leg at the back and a flexed leg in the front. And let's think about child's pose. Let the pelvis rest. Let the hip sockets be soft and resilient. And let your head rest in this particular position. Some people find that they are more comfortable coming up a little bit more on their forearms, and then the head would still be heavy, but just hanging. Yeah, so you can adjust certainly in terms of what's best for you. And then another option is to turn your back toes under and lengthen that leg a bit actively. Yeah, lengthen through your heel. Yeah, okay. And then to try the other side, you just unfold that foot, rest the top of the foot on the ground again, and then gather the leg back underneath you. So you have a moment, let's say, in symmetrical, familiar child's pose. It's possible the two legs feel very different at this point. And then try out the asymmetrical child's pose, the one leg back and long. This is actually a version of pigeon. Okay. And just notice, does this side feel the same or different than the other side? My pelvis drops during the out-breath. My hip sockets, although they're in very different configurations, they're soft and resilient. My head is hanging in heavy, or it's on the ground in heavy. And if you like, you can turn your toes under and reach that leg back, 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 back. All right, so you decide when you want to recover back to child's pose. Right. Draw your knees underneath you and take a breath or two. Now there's one more variation here, which is a more upright version of the torso. And if for any reason you would like to lengthen out both legs, let's say the amount of flexion, that's enough for your knees, you could lengthen out on your belly for this portion and do a simple Sphinx pose. Right? I'm going to describe the upright version of this parallel pigeon, which gives you a lot of length in the one hip socket. And if your preference is to come on your belly and just rest on your forearms and do Sphinx instead, that's fantastic. Okay? So lengthen one leg back so that you're in that asymmetrical child's pose or the parallel pigeon. Good. And then pay just a moment of attention to your pelvis dropping. Pelvis dropping, pelvis dropping. And then start to walk your hands back towards you. Right? And just roll your torso upright. Yeah, so Sue, you could do the typical Sphinx if you wanted, or you can have your hands on the ground, either one. Yeah, whichever you prefer. Yeah, that's it. Right. So this is a parallel version of pigeon. Pelvis is resting, and then to come out of it, you would rest back down into the child's pose position with your torso, collect your leg back underneath you into what we might call full child's pose. And then, of course, you would try the other side. You'd grow that other leg back. I think for most or many people, being on the top of the foot, right, and then resting the pelvis, rolling the torso upright, that's a good way to start. There's no reason why you can't turn the toes under and lengthen the heel back. Right? Be very interested in the comfort of your lower back and the weight of your pelvis. That's it. Good. Okay. And then whatever variation you're doing, I'd suggest come back down to the ground, lie fully on the ground on your belly, legs long, and simply rest the front body into the ground as if you are doing Shavasana on your belly. Right. And if you wanted to add a little bit more extension to the front of the hip socket, you can bend your knees, bend both knees, and rock your legs from side to side. Right? So by bending the knees, the hips extend a little bit, and if you rock the legs from side to side, you're massaging the front of the thigh, the heavy quadricep muscle, easing out some of the tension that we hold there. Great. Okay. All right, please just find your way to standing. Could be through down dog, could be maybe child's pose, and then down dog, or child's pose, and then the standing forward bend. Yeah, we're just going to stand up on the legs for a moment before we try any more pigeon variation. Yeah, if you're doing down dog or the standing forward bend, you could bend one knee and then the other. All right, so that kind of lovely shifting of weight and walking without moving through space. Great. Yeah. And eventually roll your way to standing. Okay. All right. So another part of the body that often needs a little bit of attention before doing a more typical pigeon is the upper back. So I thought we would just do a little bit with the shoulder girdle. There's a nice way of getting into the cow's head for the arms. It goes like this. You take one arm and you just swing it across and then to the other side. Right? So you're really using the weight of your arm to move your, well, I was going to say your upper body, but essentially everything is shifting. You might feel shifting all the way down into the feet. Yeah. Okay. Knees a little bit soft or what feels like a little bit bent. Yeah. Okay. Then let your arm remain wrapped around you. And, yeah, so you're in that one sort of wrapped around position. And then turn your palm over so it's facing outwards. And I'm thinking of moving a big circular curtain away from me, or moving the air away from me, a big circle around to the back, and then let the back of your hand just rest somewhere on your pelvis. Yeah, okay. So take a breath in, and as you breathe out, feel the shoulder, the arm, the hand become heavy. Breath in. Breath out, shoulder, arm, hand, heavy. All right. We're going to leave the hand exactly where it is. Bend your knees a little bit and rest forward. Right? So you're tipping forward. Your hand continues to rest on the back. Right? And then once you are all the way forward, just slightly, ever so slightly, shift that hand in the direction of your head. So you're sliding up, 1 or 2 vertebrae. Doesn't have to be very much. Okay? And then roll back up, leave the hand where you've now placed it. And take a breath as you exhale, heavy shoulder, arm, hand. Good. And then release and shake that arm a little. Okay. And circle it around, throw it around. Okay, good. All right, let's try the other side. So a floppy, heavy arm, swinging from one side to the other. Floppy, floppy. Yeah. Okay. And then stay with the arm wrapped around the front. Turn your palm outwards. You're pulling a curtain away, a circular curtain away, all the way around the body until the back of the hand can rest somewhere quite comfortably on the back of the pelvis. Exhale, shoulder, arm, hand. Your hand might lead you to resting the pelvis. It's a little cascade. Inhale, exhale, shoulder, arm, hand, pelvis, feet. Good. And then again, rest forward, your head leads, your arm stays exactly where it is. The hand is resting on your back, the head is heavy. Right. And then it can be a micrometer of movement. It doesn't have to be very much, just towards the head a little bit. Heavy, heavy hand. And then roll your way up, right, and find that little internal sense of letting go. Let go of the shoulder, the arm, the hand, the pelvis, the feet. Okay. Yeah, and wobble anything else you want to wobble. Good. Okay. All right, let go of that arm and move it gently or vigorously. Okay. All right. And then we'll just do the top end of cow's head arms. So come to your first arm, swing your arm forward, and then back down. Let it swing up towards the ceiling and fall. Okay. And feel the arm is heavy and soft. Okay. And then the next time the arm is up, just let your elbow bend and touch somewhere on the upper back. Bring the other hand to support that elbow. Right? You might even very, very gently draw that elbow towards your head. And as you breathe out, feel your shoulders drop, your pelvis drop. And bend your knees, and with the arms remaining in this position, sink forward, 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 forward. Become aware of the hand that is on your upper back and walk those fingers a little closer to your pelvis. Good. And then roll up. Roll up, up, up. And when you arrive, find the exhale and let the shoulders, the pelvis, the feet drop. Okay. And let your arms wobble, shake, throw, toss, shimmy. Good. Okay. All right. Swing the other arm. Swing it. Heavy and soft. And land the hand wherever it naturally lands. And support the elbow with the free hand. In breath, pause. Out breath, shoulders resting. Pause, shoulders resting more. And And do that rolling down, that little activity of rolling down. Let gravity help you. Let gravity help you release your upper back a little more. Walk the fingers towards your pelvis. And then roll up, roll up, roll up. And the out breath is the invitation to settle the shoulders, the pelvis, the feet. Okay. And just let go, let go. Circle, throw, wiggle, breathe. Okay. All right, we're going to come down and do a version of pigeon that maybe looks a little bit more like the pigeon you might see in a, sort of in a typical yoga book. So come on down to the ground and bring your legs into that Baddha Konasana, right? So just momentarily, just so both legs are the same, right? And then tip your way, let's say, tip your way onto your right leg, right? So you're resting on the whole side of that right leg. So your left leg is free. You can turn it over and back, right? So you have one leg that's turned out and one leg that's turned in. That's a little kind of pinwheel position. Great. All right. For most of us, certainly for me, the one side of the pelvis feels quite heavy and grounded and the other feels like it's not even quite on the ground, right? So we're going to work with that a little bit. I think you can see that this turned out leg is the front leg of pigeon, okay? So just, you can bring your torso over that front leg so you can almost turn towards it, and then you can turn back towards what feels like sitting in the middle. We'll do that just a few times. When you turn towards the front leg, you can even rest right over it, like a child's pose kind of resting, right? And then come back. The only caution with all of these pigeon variations is if this hurts your knee, please come out of it, right? And you can come back on your back and do any of the leg movements that we did at the beginning of practice on your back. Okay. If you'd like to go a little bit further, you turn towards the front leg, either resting forward or upright. You come back towards the middle, and you might even turn your upper torso so you can glance at the back foot. Right? So you get a twist. Right? And that shifting of weight actually may feel like it settles the, that light side of the pelvis a bit. Right? So just go back and forth a few times on your own. Okay. So we could say, this is pigeon, right? If you want to go further, you would rest, it feels like directly over your front leg shin, right? Your head can dangle. For many of us, the head isn't on the ground here. Could be, right? And then you start to grow that back leg back. And maybe it lengthens out and turns over. All right, so just for a moment, leave your torso in the child's pose, right? So head dropped, right? Just like we did in that parallel pigeon. Good, okay. And then let the pelvis drop and see if you can roll up just a little bit. Roll up. Take a big breath, exhale. Drop your pelvis, yeah. And then maybe come back down. Come back down. And take a few breaths. Right, really feel the whole outer edge of that front leg, front shin, front foot sinking into the ground. Okay, now how do I get out of this? I bend the back knee and I let the leg just kind of swing around. I could stop with the sole of the foot, right in front of the other leg's shin, or I could let that foot come around and cross all the way over to the opposite side of that other thigh, right? And then I can just gently hug my leg Exhale, rest the shoulders, the pelvis, the feet. Okay. Now, the leg that's upright, that's going to be the front leg on the second side. All right, so take one more breath or two more breaths. Exhale, shoulders, pelvis, feet. All right, so just notice which leg is going to be the front leg. It's the one that's the elevated knee. All right, unravel, maybe put your legs in front of you and wobble them a little. Good. Okay. All right, so you could do the, here I am in the tailor's pose, Baddha Konasana, butterfly, and then I put all my weight into what will be the new front leg. Out, so I free up the other leg and I can turn it back. Okay. All right, and then let's just move around here. This moving around, this taking the weight over the front leg and resting back, right? Or over the front leg, and resting all the way towards the ground, or even coming back and turning and looking at that back foot, right? All of that is massaging and freeing up the hip sockets. Okay. Right, down, right? Pigeon is down in the way every other pose is down. Yeah, the pelvis is going down. Or very simply, what's on the ground, we want more on the ground. Yeah, that's it. Beautiful. Right? Again, so this is pigeon. I don't have to do any more. If I want to do more, I can rest forward over that front shin. Maybe just take note of the feeling of that whole outer leg and outer foot resting, and then start to grow that back leg back as if it's like a tail growing. I exhale, I rest and rest and rest that leg and pelvis. Good. Right? So this could be my pigeon. Or if I want to come upright, I'm going to intentionally make my pelvis heavier, just like I do in child's pose, on an out breath, and then try to roll upright. In a stronger posture, a stronger breath might be helpful. Right? And then when I'm ready to come out, I come back down, I rest on the ground. It's very child's pose-like in the body, in the torso. And then I bend the back knee and I swing it slowly around. Again, I can stop with the sole of the foot in front of the shin or keep going and let that foot cross over. And I simply just gently hug that upright leg so I can rest my shoulders, my pelvis, my feet. Unravel, lengthen your legs in front of you and wobble them. Yeah. Okay. So what I would suggest is that you rest back, maybe do a twist of your choice. Could be something a twist could be just your head rocking, but you might do a twist with your legs switching sides. And then when you're ready, just rest back into your Shavasana. Okay. So simple. The entire practice could be every time I change my position, what's on the floor? Can I rest it more? That's it. Breathe your body soft. Notice how beautifully different each part of your breath cycle is. The in-breath feels different than the pause. The out-breath feels different than the pause. Enjoy the detail and the soothing quality of your breathing. Please rest for as long as you would like.